Welcome back to The Fire. You loved the last episodes, and we're pumped to bring you episode 4, diving deeper into the wild world of Andrew Tate. No fluff. Let's jump straight in.
Okay, so let's dive into this stack of material we've got here. It's all focused on Andrew Tate's business ventures.
Right, specifically looking at that early webcam business and then Hustlers University later on.
Exactly. And what we want to do, our mission really, is to pull out the core strategies from these sources, the lessons, and yeah, the controversies too.
There's definitely controversy mentioned.
Oh, yeah. So this is your deep dive into all this research and reporting. We're aiming to help you cut through the noise, figure out what's, most important and insightful from what's been provided.
Sounds good. Where do we start? The webcam stuff.
Let's start there. Looking at the material, this webcam business, it wasn't just like a random idea.
No, it's presented more like an epiphany he had, right? After kickboxing finished for him.
Yeah, seeing the internet as this new kind of battleground.
A place to operate.
And the core idea seems to be finding unexplored territory, something ripe for exploitation.
Specifically tapping into what the sources call men's longing for connection and validation.
Right. And the drive behind it, according to this material, it went beyond near financial gain.
What else, then?
It was apparently about proving he could transform any scenario, any talent, into a thriving empire. That's the framing.
Okay, that's quite a statement. And what's fascinating is how the material describes the concept he used.
How so?
Well, it talks about him using his best attributes, things like charisma, psychological insight, and strategic manipulation to actually build the whole system.
So not just setting up cameras.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
The sources suggest he wasn't just selling webcam time. He was, and this is a quote, peddling dreams, fantasies, and the illusion of personal connection, really leveraging psychology.
Okay, and the details back that up. The material mentions how he coached the women, right, on engagement.
Making clients feel uniquely valued.
Yeah, turning their charm, their interaction skills directly into profit.
Yeah.
The model itself is described as deceptively simple yet groundbreaking.
Managed with precision, too. That word comes up.
It does. So let's connect this back. What's the takeaway here for you, the listener, from this first venture?
Well, the material really frames this as a lesson, doesn't it? About spotting and exploiting market niches.
Niches where your own specific abilities can be turned into revenue.
Exactly. Looking past the obvious, finding those unmet demands that maybe others don't see or don't want to touch.
It really underlines how crucial it is to figure out your unique selling points. What makes you different?
Right, because the sources say Tate wasn't just selling time slots, he was offering an experience.
An escape for men and empowerment for women is how it's put.
Yeah, so that early move, it kind of demonstrated that pretty much any skill, any trait you have.
Like charisma or insight.
Just drive, yeah. With the right strategy, it could become a real business.
So the lesson seems to be, seize opportunities others might see as tricky, capitalize on what differentiates you.
Okay, now moving on. Here's where the material suggests things get really interesting. Scaling up.
Right, scaling the webcam operation. It wasn't just about getting bigger offices or more models.
No, the sources describe it as a push for market dominance. Building a well-oiled system, a machine.
And recruitment was a massive piece of that puzzle.
How do they approach it?
Well, the material says he was hunting for people with specific traits. Charisma, the right appearance, and crucially, this eagerness to master the art of engagement.
And where do they find these people?
Everywhere, apparently.
Yeah.
Social media, nightlife spots. The framing wasn't just, here's a job.
More like
a transformative lifestyle and an education in monetizing attention. That's how it's presented.
Okay, that definitely raises questions about the training involved. What do the sources say?
They describe it almost like alchemy, indoctrinating them into the Tate way.
The Tate way. So specific methods.
Yeah, learning psychology, the art of captivation, techniques to make each client feel unique, special.
So it wasn't just improv.
No, the sessions were regimented, covering everything from conversation starters to, like, personal branding for their online personas.
Wow. The material paints it as an academy where Tate was the instructor.
Pretty much. Teaching them not just to be earners, but entrepreneurs within his whole setup.
And the operational side. Logistics.
That's detailed too. Multiple studios, monitoring systems, tracking client loyalty, model performance, constantly trying to cut inefficiencies.
And his management style.
Described as direct yet strategic, knowing when to micromanage details and when to delegate responsibility.
So if we connect this to, like, broader entrepreneurial lessons.
What jumps out?
The skills highlighted here, leadership, organization, scaling. These are framed as what separates the empire builders from, just dreamers.
Leadership here seems to be about earning respect through this powerful vision, one that magnetized everyone involved.
Yeah, and organization was fundamental for the scaling part. You need systems, time management that drive for continuous improvement.
And there's a real emphasis in the material on systemic thinking. Seeing the business as an integrated system where all the pieces affect each other, you can't just scale one part in isolation.
Right. It required foresight, planning, and readiness to pivot.
Yeah, if things weren't working, the goal wasn't just growth for growth's sake. It was building something that could operate and evolve somewhat independently.
Without constant personal oversight. Creating a legacy, as the source puts it.
Right. Okay, so the business is scaling, making money, but then comes the inevitable part.
The controversy.
Exactly. The material makes it really clear that this webcam business became, quote, an epicenter of ethical debates and public controversy.
And critics, what were their main points according to the sources?
They called it manipulative and exploitative. A lot of focus was on what they termed the lover boy method of recruitment.
So, using charm to recruit?
Yeah.
How is that framed by critics?
They saw it as coercion rather than empowerment. They viewed the whole industry as inherently exploitative, focusing on power dynamics and emotional manipulation.
And questioning the basic morality, right? Of capitalizing on human desires and vulnerabilities.
Yeah, that's the core of the criticism presented. But the material also includes Tate's side of the story.
His counterarguments.
He apparently clarified in these sources that he never coerced anyone. He framed it as offering opportunities for women to make significant money.
By leveraging their charm, but in a way he called empowering and financially rewarding.
Right. He stressed choice and autonomy, arguing the system was for mutual benefit, where participants were active players whose skills were valued.
Okay, but there's a twist mentioned in the material too, isn't there? About the controversy itself.
You mean how some of it was self-generated?
Yeah, through the narrative he himself crafted. The sources say he was quite candid about employing tactics like using personal sob stories or psychological strategies to get clients to spend more.
And that candor led to different interpretations.
How so?
Well, some saw it as basically admitting to unethical manipulation.
While his perspective, as described, was more pragmatic. Like, business is about understanding and navigating human nature.
Pretty much. So the core debate described isn't just about the ethics of the business model, but also heavily about public perception.
Which often painted him as the antagonist in a modern morality tale, according to the material.
So connecting this back to you, the listener, this part really highlights a critical challenge for any entrepreneur, right?
That balancing act. Navigating the delicate equilibrium between profitability and ethical considerations.
Yeah. And the material suggests profit isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet, it's tied up with perception. Your reputation is described as currency.
And incredibly hard to get back if you lose it.
Especially now. The sources point out that public perception is even more critical in the era of social media. Every move is scrutinized.
So you have to be strategic in how you position your business and justify your methods?
Definitely. And the material mentions Tate realizing you can't totally control perception, but you can try to influence these perceptions through transparency.
By showing the model is based on choice, not coercion. That was his angle.
So the lesson drawn from this section seems to be, align your practices with a philosophy that can actually endure public scrutiny.
Because controversy might get you attention.
But the material warns that can lead to your undoing if you're not careful. The takeaway offered is stark. Never compromise your integrity for short-term gains.
Because your reputation, your ethical stance, that's what will dictate whether you're remembered as an innovator or a scoundrel. Heavy stuff.
Yeah, okay, so after the webcam business and all that scrutiny, the material describes a major shift.
The pivot to online education.
Right, and it's framed not just as a change, but as an evolution, something showcasing his entrepreneurial adaptability.
He saw the limitations and challenges of the webcam model.
Apparently so. Especially the constant ethical scrutiny. The sources suggest he recognized his true value wasn't just in running that kind of operation.
But in the lessons he'd learned.
Exactly. From all his experiences, kickboxing, reality TV, the webcam stuff, building his brand, he wanted to teach others how to think, act, and live like a winner.
So this move was framed more as legacy building through education.
That's the idea presented.
Yeah.
And connecting this to the bigger picture, the sources say he executed this pivot with the same kind of...
Strategic acumen.
Yeah, that phrase again. He leveraged his existing online presence, his already polarizing yet captivating persona, to launch Hustlers University.
And the execution, what did it look like?
Launching courses on a whole range of topics, online money-making like e-commerce, crypto.
But also other stuff.
Yeah, social interaction, fitness, psychology.
Yeah.
The model is described as straightforward yet impactful, affordable, accessible learning, plus a community aspect.
And the material notes, he applied his understanding of psychology here too, right?
Yeah, definitely. Designing courses intended not just to teach skills, but to be life-altering, aiming to shift the student's whole outlook and lifestyle.
So the entrepreneurial lesson here for you, what do the sources emphasize?
It's fundamentally about survival and growth, thriving by adapting.
Being ready to alter your course if the current path leads to stagnation, or, if a better opportunity comes along.
It really highlights not being anchored to a single identity or business model.
But using all your past experiences, good and bad, to fuel new ventures. The material suggests that turning your journey into lessons for others is a pretty high level of achievement.
Yeah, showing how your experiences can be a roadmap for others, helping them maybe sidestep pitfalls and emulate successes.
And there's another key point mentioned, diversification.
Right. Relying on just one income stream is precarious. This pivot showed the wisdom in spreading risks.
Applying your brand, your knowledge across different platforms and products.
The sources suggest this is how you move from just being a businessman to maybe a visionary, or from a teacher to the leader of a movement.
Okay, so he pivots to education. But how did he market Hustlers University? The sources say he didn't just enter the space.
No, he dominated it. And his promotion method wasn't typical marketing. It's described as revolutionizing how education is sold.
Using what tools?
Social media, content marketing, personal branding described as formidable tools. The strategy seems to be so authentic, stir controversy, be so himself.
That he was impossible to ignore.
Exactly. Social media became his main arena. To sell the courses, he essentially had to sell himself, his philosophy, his lifestyle.
And the content style.
Raw and unfiltered, according to the sources. Designed deliberately to challenge societal norms, ignite debates, and fuel passions.
So his posts were like provocations.
Yeah, promoting this life where mediocrity was unacceptable and success was the only goal.
And the virality aspect is interesting here.
How so?
The sources suggest he used it strategically, not just for fame, but specifically for disseminating his message widely, making HU the place people thought of for this stuff.
His content marketing was very narrative-driven, too. Each piece, a lesson, motivation, a rally cry, sharing personal stories, tactics, mindset shifts.
And the personal branding was key. It felt authentic because he positioned himself as the embodiment of his teaching.
Like, look at me, this is what I teach, and it works.
Right. And controversy wasn't just for clicks, according to the material. It was used to initiate discussions, make people rethink their lives.
Thereby highlighting the value he claimed his courses offered.
And engagement was crucial too, wasn't it? He didn't just broadcast.
No, he actively interacted, challenged, and debated. Every interaction reinforced the message, making the courses seem like this gateway to a superior life. Live sessions helped too, demonstrating expertise directly.
So the sources suggest the essence of modern marketing, shown here, is generating demand through
Force of personality, authenticity, and strategic controversy. To sell education this way, you have to be more than an expert.
You need to be a personality who inspires, provokes, and leads. People invest in stories, lifestyles, and the aspiration to transform.
And authenticity is called your most potent tool, especially now when so much online feels curated. Being genuinely you sets you apart.
His life was the syllabus. The courses were the instruments.
It really underlines that your own insights and experiences can be educational products if you share them and lead by example.
And controversy. The sources add that when leveraged judiciously, it's a powerful way to magnify your message.
It turns every interaction, every piece of content, into an opportunity for educational, marketing, and influence building. This is how you become a market disruptor, according to the material.
Okay, let's talk about the actual philosophy taught at Hustlers University. What do the sources say?
They present it as something that transcends mere financial gain. It's more about re-engineering one's mind and life to achieve dominance.
Dominance in what sense?
Across different areas, it seems. A core principle is just hard work. The material emphasizes his message. No shortcuts. You have to work harder than everyone else.
And financial freedom is big too, right?
Huge. Coming from poverty, the sources indicate he sees money as the gateway to liberty, escaping dependency. So the courses teach wealth creation.
But they emphasize the why, achieving control over one's life.
Exactly. Which brings us to mindset. The sources really hammer this point.
Calling it the key. Your mind is your greatest ally or worst enemy.
Yeah, and they mention concepts like the matrix, societal structures holding you back, and how to break free.
And resilience is taught too.
Definitely. Turning failures into lessons, viewing everything as a chance for growth. Setbacks are just paving the way for comebacks.
So this whole philosophy, connecting it back for you, the listener, it's about becoming this unstoppable force.
Where every experience is a lesson for business and life. Life is seen as strategic investments in yourself, knowledge, relationships.
You're not just working for money, but for the development of a self that can thrive no matter what.
And the material talks about internal battles, too. Conquering self-doubt, procrastination, the lure of instant gratification.
Which requires discipline, lifelong learning, and the bravery to diverge from the norm to embrace risks.
So, at its core, the sources suggest HU teaches you to transform every aspect of life into a lesson in success. Wealth is about mindset and adaptability.
Shattering mediocrity, building wealth, and a legacy of resilience, innovation, freedom. Every moment is leveraged for learning, growth, and dominance. That's the essence presented.
Now, the material notes HU's success wasn't just about the money Tate made.
It had a profound impact on students' lives.
That's what's reported. Huge audience testimonials cited about changed lives, tangible methods taught for e-commerce, crypto, leading to reported financial improvement.
And the numbers mentioned are pretty staggering. Millions in monthly income, hundreds of thousands of members. It fostered a real community, a movement.
And part of the strategy mentioned was to democratize education, making it relatively affordable.
But, and it's a big but, this success was shadowed by significant criticism.
Absolutely. The sources stress this. Detractors zeroed in on his controversial public image. They challenged the teachings, especially on masculinity and achievement.
What kind of accusations?
The material says, accusations of fostering a toxic mentality and disseminating misogynistic ideas were rampant. Huge backlash online, in the media, from groups worried about young men.
So the attack was on his persona and the philosophy's interpretation, not just the business model.
Right. And the sources note the social media bans just amplified all this, making him even more polarizing.
Critics also felt the course's oversimplified reality, arguing that real success is far more nuanced.
Yeah, and doubts were raised about the long-term viability of the income strategies taught. Were they sustainable or just get-rich-quick schemes? That question hangs there in the material.
Okay, so connecting this again to the bigger picture of entrepreneurship, the sources describe it as a battleground.
Where praise and criticism are equally abundant, and the lesson is you have to learn from both.
Right. HU's success showed a clear demand, but the criticism highlighted a need for clarity, maybe, ensuring the message wasn't lost in the controversial branding.
It's about refining business models, adapting products, embracing ongoing evolution, according to the sources.
And resilience comes up again.
Right?
Resilience against public scrutiny.
Because when you're in the spotlight, you're a target and a role model. Critique is framed as a chance for introspection.
Asking, are these teachings truly empowering, or do they need refinement?
So the final lesson here from the material seems to be, don't let praise make you complacent, and don't let criticism define you.
Use both as catalysts for growth, improvement, and innovation. Keep adapting, not just for relevance, but to truly meet your audience's needs.
Be as good at listening as you are at leading. Evolve your offerings for financial gain, but for meaningful impact.
Leverage all the lessons, including the critiques, to advance personally and create something enduring, something that profoundly changes lives. That's the high-level takeaway presented.
So we've really gone through this material now, covering Andrew Tate's journey as presented in these sources, from the webcam business right through to Hustlers University.
Yeah, looking at the strategies, the scaling methods, the underlying philosophy, and of course that intense controversy surrounding it all.
The material gave us insights into, well, how he identified and exploited niches, how he leveraged personal traits, built systems,
navigated public perception and ethics, pivoted strategically, and really dominated online marketing through personality and, controversy.
Plus that whole philosophy built around hard work, financial freedom, and mindset.
It's definitely a complex picture painted by these sources. You see sharp business moves, huge financial success, a clear impact on his followers.
But also these deep ethical questions and just constant, intense public scrutiny.
So thinking about the lessons that emerge from the material, especially that tension between business success, personal branding, ethics, and perception in today's world.
It leaves you, the listener, with some things to consider.
Like, how do the core entrepreneurial lessons here about spotting opportunities, marketing strategically, building a community, how might they apply to your own goals or projects, even if you completely separate them from the controversy?
And maybe reflecting on what this material suggests is the true long-term cost of building a business around such a controversial brand can impact, however large, ever fully outweigh major ethical concerns in the end. Something to think about.
That's a wrap. Mind blown by Andrew Tate's epic journey? We hope you're as fired up as we are. Thanks for joining us. You're destined for greatness, and we're here to fuel your rise. Gen Z Creatives unveiling the future. Smash that subscribe, like, and share to keep the vibe viral.